Black widow with 5 children whispered, "We haven't eaten in days," the giant cowboy muttered, watching from his forge as the desperate woman collapsed at the town's edge, her starving babies clinging to her tattered dress. The mining town saw only another burden, a colored woman with too many mouths and empty pockets. They turned their backs, whispering she'd be dead by winter's end, her children scattered to the wind like tumbleweeds. But the towering blacksmith recognized something familiar in her haunted eyes. The same guilt that kept him awake nights, the same shadows that drove him from human connection after failing to save the last family that needed him. What neither the woman nor the town knew was that dangerous men were already closing in, hunting her across the frontier for reasons that could destroy them all. Would the broken cowboy find the courage to protect what he'd failed to save before, or would his silence doom another innocent family to the fate that haunted his every waking moment? Before we continue, comment where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will publish a story there. Snow fell thick across Rattlesnake Ridge as the last light faded from the Montana sky. The dying mining town huddled against the winter wind like a wounded animal. Most buildings stood empty now. The lucky families had already fled east. Ezekiel Boone hammered red-hot iron in his forge. Each strike rang out across the silent main street. At 6 feet 4 inches, he towered over his anvil. Steam rose from his massive shoulders. He worked alone, always alone. The sound of stumbling footsteps broke through the rhythmic hammering. Zeke looked up from his work. A woman emerged from the tree line beyond town. 5 small figures trailed behind her like shadows. The woman's dark skin glistened with sweat despite the freezing air. Her dress hung in tatters. The children's faces were hollow with hunger. The smallest boy could barely walk. His older sister carried him on her back. They approached the general store first. Through his window, Zeke watched the woman knock on the door. Harold Brennan opened it halfway. He shook his head before she could speak. The door slammed shut. The woman tried the boarding house next. Mrs. Patterson appeared in her doorway. She glanced at the family's skin color and stepped back inside. Another door closed. The family stood in the middle of the empty street. Snow collected on their shoulders. The woman's breath came in sharp puffs. She pulled her children closer. Zeke's hammer grew still in his hand. The scene before him stirred memories he'd buried deep. Another family. Different faces. Same desperation. The woman looked around desperately. Her eyes found the old abandoned cabin at the edge of town. She gathered her children and walked toward it. Their footprints left dark holes in the pristine snow. Zeke returned to his work. The hammer struck iron with renewed force. But his mind wandered to the empty cabin. No heat, no food, no hope. The morning brought fresh snow and bitter wind. Zeke opened his shop early. Smoke rose from the abandoned cabin's chimney. Someone had managed to start a fire. Harold Brennan stood outside his store sweeping. He watched the cabin with narrow eyes. "Trouble brewing," Harold muttered as Zeke passed. "Mark my words." The oldest boy from the family appeared on the street. He walked with purpose toward the general store. The boy's clothes were too thin for the weather. His boots had holes. Zeke followed at a distance. He pretended to examine horseshoes in Harold's window display. The boy entered the store. He pulled something from his pocket. A pocket watch gleamed in the lamplight. "Please, sir," the boy said. "Just some bread. This watch belonged to my father." Harold barely glanced at the timepiece. "Don't take trades from your kind. Move along." The boy's shoulders sagged. He clutched the watch tighter. "My little brother is sick. He needs food." "Not my problem." Harold's voice carried no warmth. "Town's got enough troubles without feeding strays." The boy left empty-handed. He walked back toward the cabin with slow steps. His head hung low. Zeke felt something twist in his chest, the same feeling that had haunted him for 3 years. Since the massacre at Crow Creek. Since he'd failed to save the family hiding in the brush. That evening, Zeke loaded a burlap sack with supplies. Dried meat, hardtack, a small bag of flour. He waited until full darkness fell over the town. The cabin windows glowed with weak firelight. Zeke crept close enough to hear voices inside. The woman's voice was soft but educated. She spoke differently than he'd expected. "Tomorrow we'll try the next town," she whispered to her children. "Someone will help us there." But Zeke knew better. The next town was 60 miles through mountain passes. They'd never make it in this weather. He left the sack by their door. He knocked once and disappeared into the shadows. The next morning brought news that chilled him deeper than the wind. Amos Fletcher spread word through town. 3 men had been asking questions in the neighboring settlements, well-dressed strangers, looking for a colored woman traveling with children. Fletcher gathered a small crowd outside the saloon. "Probably bounty hunters," he declared. "That woman's running from something. Trouble follows her kind." Zeke's blood ran cold. He'd seen bounty hunters before. They rarely brought their quarry back alive. The woman emerged from her cabin that afternoon. She carried herself with surprising dignity despite her circumstances. Her movements were precise, careful, like someone accustomed to being watched. The smallest boy stumbled beside her. His face burned with fever. The woman scooped him up without breaking stride. She headed straight for the only building with a painted cross above the door. Doc Henley's office sat at the far end of town, but everyone knew the old doctor spent more time with his bottle than his patients. The woman knocked on his door anyway. No answer came. She knocked harder. The boy in her arms grew limp. His breathing became shallow. The door finally opened. Doc Henley swayed on his feet. His eyes were bloodshot. His clothes reeked of whiskey. "What you want?" he slurred. "My son needs help," the woman said. "Please." Doc Henley squinted at the burning child. He waved his hand dismissively. "Give him some water. He'll be fine. He has a high fever. His breathing is labored. This could be pneumonia." The doctor's expression shifted. Something about her words surprised him. "You some kind of expert?" "I know enough to see he needs immediate treatment." Doc Henley laughed bitterly. "Treatment costs money. You got money?" The woman's jaw tightened. She turned away from the door. The sick child's head lolled against her shoulder. Zeke watched from across the street. The same helpless rage filled his chest, the same fury that had consumed him at Crow Creek when he'd arrived too late. This time felt different. This time he could still act. The child's breathing grew more labored as night fell. Lucy Harding paced the cabin floor with her youngest son Benjamin in her arms. His small body burned like a coal against her chest. Her other children watched with frightened eyes. Nathaniel stood by the window keeping guard. Mary helped the twins stay warm by the dying fire. They had used the last of their wood hours ago. Benjamin's lips had turned blue. His chest barely rose and fell. Lucy recognized the signs. Pneumonia was claiming him fast. She made her decision. Lucy wrapped Benjamin in their only blanket. She stepped into the bitter night air. Her feet crunched through the snow toward the doctor's office. The building was dark. She pounded on the door until her knuckles bled. Light finally flickered in the window above. Doc Henley stumbled down the stairs. He opened the door halfway. Whiskey fumes rolled out like a cloud. "Told you before," he mumbled. "No money, no medicine. This child is dying." Lucy's voice cut through the cold air. "You took an oath to help people." "Oath don't pay for my supplies." Henley swayed against the doorframe. "Besides, got no medicine for his kind anyway." Lucy pushed past him into the office. Benjamin's breathing had become a terrible wheeze. She laid him on the examination table. Henley followed her inside. He grabbed a brown bottle from his shelf. "Give him this. Laudanum will ease his passing." "That's opium." Lucy's voice was sharp. "It will suppress his breathing further. You'll kill him." Henley's eyes narrowed. "Since when do you know about medicine?" Lucy ignored him. She moved to his supply cabinet. Her hands found what she needed with practiced efficiency: camphor oil, willow bark extract, clean cloth for poultices. "What are you doing?" Henley demanded. Lucy began preparing the treatments. Her movements were precise and confident. She heated water on Henley's small stove. She mixed compounds with exact measurements. "Stop that," Henley slurred. "You can't just take my supplies." Lucy applied the camphor mixture to Benjamin's chest. She elevated his head to help his breathing. She administered small doses of willow bark extract to reduce his fever. Within minutes, Benjamin's color began to improve. His breathing deepened. The blue tint faded from his lips. Henley stared in amazement. "How did you know to do that?" "Basic pneumonia treatment." Lucy continued her work with steady hands. "Though you nearly made it worse with your laudanum suggestion." Word spread quickly through the small town. Mrs. Patterson arrived first. She carried her infant daughter, who had been coughing for days. "Please," she begged Lucy, "can you help her too?" Lucy examined the baby with gentle hands. She diagnosed a simple respiratory infection. She prepared a mild steam treatment using herbs from Henley's neglected garden. More families followed. Amos Fletcher brought his wife Martha, who had been bedridden for weeks. Lucy identified the woman's condition as severe anemia. She prescribed iron-rich foods and specific rest periods. The crowd in the doctor's office grew. Lucy moved between patients with calm authority. She diagnosed conditions Henley had missed for months. She provided treatments that actually worked. Zeke appeared in the doorway. He watched Lucy work with growing amazement. She handled each patient like a trained professional. "Where did you learn this?" Zeke asked quietly. Lucy's hands never stopped moving as she treated Martha Fletcher. "Medical College in Philadelphia, class of 1879. The room fell silent. Even Henley stopped drinking long enough to stare. "You're a real doctor?" Amos Fletcher's voice carried disbelief. "I am." Lucy's response was matter of fact. "Trained alongside my husband. We practiced together until he died." She finished treating Martha Fletcher. The woman's color had already improved. "You need rest and proper nutrition. No more heavy lifting for 2 weeks." Martha grasped Lucy's hand. "Thank you." Doc Henley said there was nothing to be done. Lucy turned to address the entire room. "Your town has been without proper medical care for too long. People are dying from treatable conditions." Henley bristled. "I've been practicing medicine for 20 years. Practicing poorly." Lucy's words were direct but not cruel. "When did you last study new treatments? When did you last examine a patient while sober?" The truth hit like a physical blow. Everyone in the room knew Henley's reputation. They had watched their loved ones suffer under his negligent care. "She saved my baby," Mrs. Patterson whispered. "In minutes." "Fixed my Martha, too," Amos added. "First time she's been out of bed in months." Young Benjamin stirred on the examination table. His fever had broken completely. He opened his eyes and looked around with clarity. "Mama," he whispered. Lucy gathered him in her arms. Tears streamed down her face. "I'm here, sweetheart." The room erupted in amazed chatter. People had witnessed something extraordinary, a miracle performed with knowledge instead of faith. Zeke stepped forward. "This town needs you." Lucy met his eyes. "This town turned us away. Let us starve in the cold. We were wrong." Amos Fletcher's voice carried new respect. "We judged too quickly. Some of us did." Zeke's gaze swept the room. "But people can change their minds when they see the truth." Lucy looked around at the faces surrounding her. Fear and suspicion had been replaced by hope and gratitude. These people needed her skills desperately, but she also knew the dangers that followed her family. The men hunting them would not stop. They would bring violence to anyone who helped her. "I need to think," she said finally. "My children's safety comes first." "We can protect you," Zeke said firmly. "All of you." Lucy studied his face. She saw something there she recognized, the same haunted guilt that drove her to heal others, despite the risk to herself. "Why would you help us?" she asked. Zeke's jaw tightened. "Because everyone deserves a second chance." Dawn broke over Rattlesnake Ridge with news that split the town down the middle. Word of Lucy's medical miracle had spread through every household by sunrise. The mining families whispered about the colored woman who had accomplished what their town doctor could not. Amos Fletcher called an emergency town meeting for that afternoon. The old church bell rang out across the settlement. People emerged from their homes with determined faces and heated opinions. Lucy spent the morning treating more patients in Henley's office. The disgraced doctor had disappeared before dawn, leaving behind only empty bottles and the smell of failure. 3 more children recovered from respiratory infections under her care. 2 elderly miners regained strength after proper diagnosis of their ailments. Zeke worked nearby, reinforcing the medical office with stronger shelves and better lighting. He said little, but his presence provided quiet support. Lucy noticed how he moved with military precision. Every action had purpose. The church filled rapidly as afternoon approached. Families who had lost loved ones to inadequate medical care sat beside those who feared change. The tension was thick enough to cut with a blade. Amos Fletcher stood at the pulpit. His wife Martha sat in the front row, looking healthier than she had in months. The transformation was undeniable. "We're here to decide this woman's fate," Amos announced. "Some say she's a godsend, others call her a danger." Harold Brennan shot to his feet. "She's an outsider. We don't know anything about her past. Could be a criminal for all we know." "She saved my grandson," called out an elderly woman from the back. "That's all I need to know." "Saved my wife too," Amos admitted. "But the fact remains, she's asking us to trust her with our lives." Mrs. Patterson stood with her healthy baby in her arms. "She already has my trust. My daughter was dying. Now she's breathing clear." The debate grew heated. Voices rose as neighbors argued with neighbors. The room divided along lines of fear and hope. Zeke remained silent in the back corner. He watched Lucy's face as insults and praise flew through the air in equal measure. She endured both with dignity. "What about the law?" Harold demanded. "Is she even licensed to practice in the territory?" "What about our current doctor?" Mrs. Patterson shot back. "When did Henley last help anyone?" "At least Henley's white," someone muttered from the middle rows. The comment hit like a thunderclap. The room fell into uncomfortable silence. Lucy's children, sitting in the front row, heard every word clearly. Nathaniel started to rise, his young face burning with anger. Lucy placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. She stood slowly and faced the crowd. "I understand your concerns," she said. Her voice carried to every corner of the church. "You don't know me. You don't trust my skin color. You fear what strangers might bring to your town." She paused, letting her words settle. "But you've seen what I can do. Your children are breathing. Your sick are healing. Your dying are living." Harold crossed his arms. "That doesn't change what you are." "You're right," Lucy replied calmly. "I am a trained physician. I am a mother of 5 children. I am a woman who has lost everything and is trying to rebuild." She looked directly at Harold. "I am also your only hope for proper medical care. The nearest qualified doctor is 200 miles away." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Everyone knew the harsh truth of their isolation. Zeke finally stepped forward. His massive frame commanded immediate attention. "I'd like to say something." The room turned toward him. Most had never heard him speak in public before. 3 years ago, I failed to protect innocent people," Zeke said. His voice was steady but heavy with pain. "I've lived with that failure every day since." He looked at Lucy and her children. "Yesterday, I watched good people turn away a starving family. Today, I see that same family offering to save our lives." Zeke faced the crowd directly. "This woman has more honor than most men I've served alongside. Her children show more courage than grown soldiers I've known." His words carried the weight of military authority. Several veterans in the crowd nodded with recognition. "If we turn them away now," Zeke continued, "we're not just fools. We're cowards." The church fell silent again. Amos Fletcher looked around the room, gauging the mood. His wife smiled at him from the front row. Her improved health spoke louder than any argument. "All in favor of accepting Dr. Harding as our town physician," Amos called out. Hands rose slowly at first. Mrs. Patterson raised hers immediately. 3 mining families followed. Several mothers lifted their arms high. The count grew as more hands appeared. Veterans influenced by Zeke's words added their support. Families who had lost children to poor medical care joined the vote. Harold Brennan remained seated with his arms crossed. A handful of others refused to raise their hands, but they were clearly outnumbered. "Motion carries," Amos announced. "Dr. Harding, this town officially welcomes you." Applause began tentatively, then grew into a genuine ovation. Lucy felt tears streaming down her face. Her children beamed with relief and joy. After the crowd dispersed, Lucy found herself alone with Zeke outside the church. The sun was setting over the mountains, painting the snow orange and gold. "Thank you," she said simply. "Thank you," he replied, "for giving me a chance to do the right thing." Lucy studied his weathered face. What happened 3 years ago? What failure haunts you? Zeke was quiet for a long moment. "A family needed protection. I arrived too late. They died because I hesitated. And now? Now I won't hesitate." His voice carried absolute certainty. "Whatever comes for you and your children, it will have to go through me first." Lucy felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Safety, hope, the beginning of trust. But deep in her heart, she knew the danger following her family was far from over. Spring arrived early in Rattlesnake Ridge. The snow melted into rushing streams that filled the valley with new life. Lucy's medical practice had transformed from desperate necessity into thriving reality. She moved her office into the largest building on Main Street. Zeke had spent weeks converting the old general store into a proper medical facility. Examination rooms, surgical space, and storage for medicines filled the clean, well-lit interior. Patients arrived daily from neighboring settlements. Word had spread across the territory about the skilled doctor in the dying mining town. Lucy treated everything from broken bones to difficult births with calm expertise. The town itself began to flourish. Families who had planned to leave decided to stay. New residents arrived, seeking quality medical care for their children. Businesses reopened to serve the growing population. Zeke's blacksmith shop buzzed with constant activity. He crafted medical instruments to Lucy's specifications. Surgical tools, examination tables, and specialized equipment emerged from his forge. Their partnership had become essential to both their successes. Lucy's children adapted to their new life with remarkable resilience. Nathaniel worked alongside Zeke each afternoon, learning metalworking skills. His natural aptitude impressed even the experienced blacksmith. Mary assisted Lucy with patients, showing genuine interest in medical procedures. She read every medical journal and textbook Lucy owned. The girl's quick mind absorbed complex concepts with ease. The twins, Samuel and Sarah, attended the newly reopened schoolhouse. Their intelligence and curiosity made them popular with classmates. Benjamin thrived under proper nutrition and his mother's watchful care. But Lucy carried secrets that weighed heavier with each passing day. She flinched whenever strangers rode into town. Her eyes constantly scanned faces for signs of recognition or threat. Zeke noticed her anxiety during quiet moments. He had seen the same haunted alertness in soldiers expecting attack. Lucy was running from something dangerous. One evening, as they worked together organizing medical supplies, Zeke finally asked directly, "What are you afraid of?" Lucy's hands stilled over a bottle of laudanum. "What makes you think I'm afraid?" "You check the windows constantly. You memorize every escape route. You're always ready to run." She set the bottle down carefully. "My husband and I practiced medicine in Cleveland. We treated factory workers mostly. That doesn't sound dangerous." "It wasn't supposed to be." Lucy's voice grew distant. "Thomas discovered something he shouldn't have. Workers were getting sick from their factory conditions." "Really sick?" Zeke waited for her to continue. "The factory owner was cutting costs by removing safety measures. The workers were being poisoned slowly. Thomas documented everything. What happened to him? He tried to expose the truth." Lucy's hands trembled slightly. 3 days later, he was found dead in an alley. The authorities called it a robbery. The pieces began forming a clearer picture in Zeke's mind. "But you knew better." I knew Thomas never carried money in that part of town. I knew the factory owner had too much to lose. Lucy looked directly at Zeke. I also knew they would come for me next. So you ran. I took the children and left everything behind, but I kept Thomas's medical records, all his documentation about the poisoning. Zeke understood now. Evidence that could destroy a powerful man. Evidence that has already cost my husband's life. Lucy's voice hardened. Evidence that makes me and my children permanent targets. They worked in silence for several minutes. Zeke processed the implications of what she had shared. Lucy was not just a refugee seeking a new start. She was a marked woman carrying explosive information. How long before they find you here? He asked. I don't know. We've moved 4 times in 2 years. They always seem to catch up eventually. Zeke set down the instrument he was polishing. What will you do when they come? Run again. It's the only way to keep the children safe. Running hasn't kept you safe so far. Lucy met his eyes. What else can I do? Fight a factory owner with unlimited resources? Risk my children's lives for justice that might never come? Maybe it's time to stop running. Easy for you to say. You're not being hunted. Zeke's expression grew serious. I've been hunted by something worse than hired men. I've been hunted by my own failures. He moved closer to her. Running didn't help me either. The guilt followed everywhere I went. This is different. Is it? You're letting fear control your life. Your children are growing up believing they don't deserve a home. Lucy felt anger flare in her chest. My children are alive because I run. That's what matters. Your children are watching their mother live in constant terror. What lesson does that teach them? The words hit harder than Lucy expected. She thought about Nathaniel's protective instincts, Mary's premature seriousness, the twins' cautious interactions with new friends, Benjamin's nightmares about bad men coming to take them away. You don't understand the stakes, she said quietly. I understand that good people are being hurt while evil ones stay comfortable. I understand that running away doesn't solve anything. Zeke moved to the window and looked out at the peaceful town street. This place was dying before you arrived. Now it's alive again. Families stay together because they know their children will receive proper medical care. He turned back to face her. You've already saved more lives than most people ever will. Maybe it's time to save your own. Lucy wanted to argue, but exhaustion overwhelmed her anger. 2 years of constant vigilance had drained her spirit. 2 years of teaching her children to fear their own shadows. They'll come eventually, she whispered. Then we'll be ready for them. The simple certainty in Zeke's voice provided comfort. Lucy hadn't felt since Thomas died. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to imagine staying in one place, building a real life instead of just surviving. But deep in her heart, she knew their peaceful spring was about to end. 3 men in expensive suits arrived on the morning stage from Denver. Their polished boots and gold watch chains marked them as outsiders in the rough mining town. They carried themselves with the confidence of men accustomed to getting what they wanted. Lucy spotted them through her office window. Her blood turned to ice. She recognized the type immediately, well-dressed predators who solve problems with money and violence. The lead man was tall and thin with cold gray eyes. He spoke to Harold Brennan outside the general store. Harold pointed toward Lucy's medical office. The man tipped his hat and smiled without warmth. Lucy's hands shook as she gathered her most important possessions. The leather satchel containing Thomas's medical records sat hidden beneath a loose floorboard. She retrieved it quickly. Mary, gather your brothers and sister, Lucy called. We need to leave immediately. But Mama, we just got settled here, Mary protested. Now, child, don't ask questions. Mary saw the terror in her mother's eyes. She obeyed without another word. The 3 strangers entered the Silver Dollar Saloon. Within minutes, they had the bartender's full attention. Gold coins appeared on the bar. Information flowed as freely as whiskey. Zeke was shoeing a horse when Nathaniel burst into his shop. The boy's face was white with fear. Mama says we have to leave right now, Nathaniel gasped. 3 men in suits just arrived. She's scared. Zeke set down his hammer. Where is she? Packing everything she can carry. She won't tell us why. Zeke wiped his hands on his leather apron. Stay here. Don't leave this shop no matter what happens. He crossed Main Street with purposeful strides. Lucy was loading supplies into a wagon behind her office. Her movements were frantic and desperate. Running again? Zeke asked. They found us. Lucy's voice was barely a whisper. It's time to go. Who are they? Men sent to silence me, to destroy the evidence I carry. Zeke looked toward the saloon. What kind of evidence? Lucy stopped packing. She looked directly at him. My husband documented how Frederick Blackwood's factories poisoned their workers, detailed medical records proving systematic murder for profit. Frederick Blackwood, the railroad baron? The same. He owns factories across 6 states. Thousands of workers are being slowly killed to increase his profits. Zeke's expression hardened. He had heard of Blackwood. The man's wealth and influence reached into the highest levels of government. Thomas was going to publish the evidence in medical journals. Blackwood had him killed before he could expose the truth. And now they want to finish the job. They can't let me testify. I'm the only witness left. The 3 strangers emerged from the saloon. They walked with predatory confidence toward the medical office. The lead man's hand rested casually on his jacket. The outline of a gun showed beneath the expensive fabric. Get the children to safety, Zeke said quietly. Take them to the church. Amos will protect them. What are you going to do? What I should have done 3 years ago. Lucy grabbed his arm. These aren't ordinary men, Zeke. They're professional killers. So was I once. Zeke's military bearing returned like armor sliding into place. His shoulders squared. His eyes became cold and calculating. Lucy saw the soldier he had once been. The 3 men stopped in front of the medical office. The leader knocked politely on the door. Dr. Lucille Washington, he called out. We'd like a word. Lucy and Zeke stood in the back room, listening. Her maiden name sent chills down her spine. They knew exactly who she was. We represent certain business interests back east, the man continued. We believe you have something that belongs to our employer. Silence stretched for long moments. We're reasonable men, Doctor. Return what you took, and we'll consider this matter closed. Zeke motioned for Lucy to stay hidden. He moved toward the front door. She's not here, Zeke called through the wood. And you are? The blacksmith. She asked me to watch her office while she tends to a patient. The leader's voice became sharper. When will she return? Hard to say. Could be hours. Footsteps moved away from the door. Lucy heard hushed conversation outside. The men were planning their next move. Through the window, she watched them split up. One man headed toward the church. Another walked toward the schoolhouse. The leader remained watching the medical office. They're looking for the children, Lucy whispered. Panic seized her completely. Every protective instinct screamed at once. She moved toward the door, but Zeke blocked her path. That's exactly what they want. You running scared makes their job easier. I won't let them hurt my children. Neither will I. But we do this smart. Zeke moved to his tool chest. He pulled out items that had nothing to do with blacksmithing. A military field glass. A clean rifle wrapped in oiled cloth. Ammunition stored in a waterproof pouch. You kept your service weapons, Lucy observed. Old habits. He checked the rifle's action with practiced efficiency. Every movement was smooth and automatic. I'm sending a telegram to the territorial marshal, Zeke said. If Blackwood's men are here, they've crossed federal jurisdiction lines. Marshals can be bought. Not all of them. I know men who can't be corrupted. Lucy watched him prepare for battle. Why are you doing this? Because running away didn't save the last family I failed to protect. Maybe standing and fighting will save this one. He looked directly at her. Besides, some fights are worth having. Outside, the man watching their building was growing impatient. His partners returned with information about the children's locations. Lucy could see them pointing toward different buildings. They know where my children are, she whispered. Then it's time to end this. Zeke moved through the back alleys with military precision. He reached the telegraph office without being seen. The operator, a young man named Tommy, looked up from his desk with surprise. "Need to send an urgent message to Marshal William Garrett and Helena," Zeke said quietly. Tommy's eyes widened at the mention of the territorial marshal. He prepared his equipment quickly. Zeke dictated carefully. "Armed men threatening witness in Blackwood factory case. Send immediate assistance to Rattlesnake Ridge. Evidence in danger." The message clicked out across the wires. Tommy looked up nervously. "Marshal Garrett's 3 hours away by fast horse." "Then we hold them for 3 hours." Zeke slipped back through the alleys toward the church. Inside, he found Amos Fletcher organizing the town's men. Word had spread quickly about the dangerous strangers. "How many guns do we have?" Zeke asked. 12 rifles, maybe 20 pistols," Amos replied. "Most of the miners know how to shoot. These aren't claim jumpers or drifters. They're professionals." The men exchanged worried glances. Fighting trained killers was different from scaring off troublemakers. "What do you need us to do?" asked Mrs. Patterson's husband. "Protect the children first. Get them to the mine shaft where they can hide safely." Lucy's children were already gathered in the church basement with several other families. Mary held Benjamin close while the twins stayed near Nathaniel. Their mother's fear had infected them all. "Is Mama going to be okay?" Benjamin asked quietly. Nathaniel tried to sound confident. "Zeke won't let anything happen to her." Meanwhile, Lucy remained hidden in her office. She could see the lead gunman through her window. He checked his pocket watch repeatedly. His patience was wearing thin. A commotion erupted outside the saloon. The second gunman had found Henley drinking away his shame. Coins changed hands. Information flowed with the whiskey. The gunman learned about Lucy's medical skills, her educated speech, her mysterious past. Most importantly, he learned about her close relationship with the town blacksmith. The third gunman returned from questioning Harold Brennan. He had discovered the children's hiding place in the church basement. The trap was closing from all sides. Lucy watched the 3 men converge near the fountain in the town square. They spoke in hushed tones, planning their final approach. Their confidence suggested they had done this many times before. She clutched the leather satchel containing Thomas's evidence. Detailed medical records, photographs of sick workers, chemical analysis of factory air and water. Proof of systematic poisoning across multiple states. This information could save thousands of lives, but it would cost Lucy and her children everything if these men succeeded. The church bell began to ring urgently. Amos's signal that the children were safely hidden. Now the real confrontation could begin. Zeke emerged from the shadows near the blacksmith shop. He carried his rifle openly, no longer hiding his intentions. The lead gunman spotted him immediately. "You're making a mistake, blacksmith," the man called out. "This is none of your concern." "Everything in this town is my concern." The gunman's hand moved closer to his weapon. "Dr. Washington has something that belongs to our employer. We're here to collect it." "Frederick Blackwood sent you," Zeke stated. It wasn't a question. Surprise flickered across the gunman's face. He hadn't expected his employer to be identified so easily. "Smart man. Then you know the kind of power you're dealing with. I know Blackwood murders workers to increase his profits. I know he killed Dr. Harding's husband. I know he sent you here to silence the only witness to his crimes." More townspeople appeared in doorways and windows. They carried weapons and wore determined expressions. The community had chosen to stand together. The gunman realized his tactical advantage was disappearing. 3 professionals against 1 family had seemed like easy work. 3 professionals against an entire armed town was a different calculation. "Last chance, blacksmith. Walk away now and everyone stays healthy." "Already sent word to the territorial marshal," Zeke replied calmly. "He's bringing federal agents. Blackwood's about to face justice." The gunman's composure cracked slightly. Their mission depended on secrecy and speed. Federal involvement complicated everything. "You're bluffing." The distant sound of approaching horses echoed across the valley. Too many horses for a casual visit. Too fast for normal travel. Marshal Garrett had received Zeke's telegram and ridden hard with a full posse. The thundering hoofbeats grew louder with each passing second. The 3 gunmen looked at each other with growing alarm. Their carefully planned operation was collapsing. Federal marshals meant trials and testimony. Blackwood's criminal empire would be exposed. "Time to go," the lead gunman said quietly to his partners. They began backing toward their horses, hoping to escape before the marshals arrived. But the townspeople had surrounded them completely. Rifles pointed from every direction. "Nobody leaves until the marshal gets here," Amos declared. The gunmen realized they were trapped, professional killers reduced to common criminals caught in the act. Marshal Garrett rode into town with 6 armed deputies. His badge caught the sunlight as he dismounted near the fountain. "Which one of you sent the telegram about the Blackwood case?" he asked. Zeke stepped forward. "That was me, Marshal." "Where's the witness we're supposed to protect?" Lucy emerged from her medical office carrying the leather satchel. She walked with dignity, despite her fear. "I'm Dr. Lucille Washington," she said clearly. "I have evidence of Frederick Blackwood's crimes against factory workers." Marshal Garrett's eyes lit up. Federal investigators had been pursuing Blackwood for months without success. "We'll need you to testify before a grand jury in Denver." "I'm ready." The 3 gunmen were arrested without resistance. Their employer's protection meant nothing against federal charges. 6 months later, Lucy stood before a packed courtroom in Denver. Her testimony, supported by Thomas's meticulous records, convicted Frederick Blackwood on multiple counts of murder and conspiracy. The factory owner received a life sentence. His criminal empire crumbled. Thousands of workers received compensation and proper medical care. Lucy returned to Rattlesnake Ridge as a hero. The town had grown into a thriving community during her absence. New families arrived seeking the security her courage had created. Zeke waited for her at the train station. He had spent months building a proper house for her family, large enough for a medical practice and 5 growing children. "Welcome home, Dr. Harding," he said with a warm smile. "Welcome home, Mr. Boone." They married that autumn in the same church where the town had voted to accept her. Their blended family became the foundation of a community built on acceptance and justice. Years later, when new desperate families arrived seeking refuge, Lucy and Zeke opened their doors without hesitation. They had learned that sometimes the greatest strength comes from choosing to stand and fight rather than running away. The town motto, carved in stone above the medical office, read simply, "In this town, no child goes hungry."